So very warm welcome to the viewers of Ambedkar Karwan. This is our third session and a very important one. We have with us Rachel Lopez, who is going to take us through the history of Buddhism through its geography. And when her article, I won't call it an article, it's like a research report on the status of the Buddhist architectural sites and objects. And she has thrown a very, I would say, a bright light on how the new findings can reveal about the history of Buddhism itself. So in a way, her effort has been to not only unearth the findings, but also see them in the historical light and perspective as to what can they mean to us, what can they mean to Buddhism. And as we know that India has been the homeland of the Buddhism, and it has disappeared because of some tragic reasons. There is a resurgence in interest in Buddhism, and I think I see Rachel studies in that particular direction, where she's trying to enliven the past, so that we can, as a nation, as the people, we can see our heritage, and how new values can be generated out of it, because we hear about the Buddhist mindfulness, meditation, and so on and so forth. But this historical dimension of Buddhism, which needs to be known largely by the larger audience, is the story that is interesting. And Rachel has been telling me that there is a story behind the story, and I don't know whether she would like to tell us the story behind the story, but a very warm welcome to you, Rachel. And
thank you very much.
So lovely to have you, and so lovely to see you. And I think we will directly dive into your presentation. Is that okay for you?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So
yes.
Let's dive into your presentation. Okay.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Mangesh. And for everyone listening in, whether you're on Facebook, whether you're catching the YouTube later on, whether you're here live, I'm so incredibly gratified. I'm so incredibly glad that people are interested in Buddhist history. They're interested in looking at more than just what they've learned in school. I'm glad that there is more stuff happening all over the place. I'm glad that historians are still interested. I'm glad that we are making more connections, making more dots. And there is a lot more that we haven't really uncovered that we're all interested in. So thank you for everyone whose interest has brought them here. I am very grateful for Mangesh and his team for giving me a platform to talk about my work. And I'm going to quickly give you an introduction to what this next hour is going to be like. Yes. A little bit about me. My name is Rachel Lopez. I'm a journalist with the Hindustan Times, where I write about culture. I write about all kinds of things. I'm very lucky. The Hindustan Times lets me write about all kinds of ideas that pop into my head. One of those ideas in May was a story about how archaeological finds from around the world are changing the way we understand history, particularly Buddhist history. We keep seeing, so I kept seeing in the newspapers that in Uzbekistan, they found one pot, that in Pakistan, suddenly they found a site, that in Odisha, in Telangana, they kept finding Buddhist sites, but you just saw bits and pieces of them. What did they all mean together? I was very curious about it. And so then I started digging, metaphorically digging by myself. And it appeared that the little bits and pieces were telling a larger story, and a story about the change in how we understand Buddhism. It appeared that all that we knew about Buddhism was so little, but every new find made sure that, it made us understand that Buddhism had spread further than we thought. It started in places earlier than we thought. It cast an influence in ways that we really didn't see. And it started to make sense in terms of how the economy of those regions, the way the people were living, the way they were eating, they were trading, all of those things were connected to Buddhism in ways that we are only now just discovering. There's plenty more to be done, but I will delve into much of the story, much of what we're going to discuss today is part of my research for that piece. The story came out on May 16 in the Hindustan Times. You can still access it, but the live version that you're getting here will have the Q&A, and Mangesh will very kindly run a PPT alongside, so you can see what we're talking about while I'm talking about it. A little bit about how we're going to go about it. I'm looking at, there will be, of course, an introduction to the works that we're looking at. A lot of the pictures that you'll see are images from artifacts that are in museums around the world. So you'll see just how far Buddhist relics, Buddhist artifacts have reached. There will be a bit about how internationally, outside of India's borders, the reach of Buddhism and the new findings. And the second part will be about new findings within our country. Very exciting stuff. So Mangesh, if you can please, if
I
you have
can.
done our screens, the screen share.
Is it there?
Yes. Could we go to the first screen, please? The previous one.
Yes.
That's right. So welcome to Discovery Channels, how new finds are changing Buddhist history globally. I'll just give you a little bit about the pictures. As I said, many of them are shot at site. Many of them are from museums. So I will be telling you a little bit about the picture that we're talking about as well. Next slide, please. All right. And all your disclaimers are here. If you want to take a look at the original story, I've put up the link. All the material and property, everything that we're discussing was part of my research for the story. Images are from, like I said, the museums. And of course, please enjoy yourself. There are going to be questions halfway through and at the end of this conversation. Next slide, please. All right, so here's what you knew, or here's what we all learned about the Buddhism, about Buddha, right? That he was born, that he was a fairly well-to-do human being, that he may or may not have been a prince, if not an aristocrat. And at some point, he renounced the world. He realized that material possessions were making no sense, desires were making no sense. There were long spells of meditation until he became what we are all now realizing as the divine. But very little else is known about him. There are apocryphal stories, there are myths, there are legends, but historically, very, very little has been known about him. We know that Buddhism flourished between 600 BCE and declined by the 13th century BCE. But what does that really mean? What's happening in 600 BC, right? 600 BC is an exciting time. For Asia, where does that stand, right? It means that 600 BC is when the Indus Valley civilization, the Harappan civilization, is gone. The Harappan civilization was around 2500 to 1700 BCE. So we are looking at an age a little after that. But what else is happening? Vardhaman Mahavir, the 24th Tirthankar, is around the same time. But what else is happening? We know that Alexander hasn't invaded Asia yet, right? So the Greeks haven't invaded this part of the world yet. We know that sugar hasn't been invented yet. We don't have sugarcane, cane sugar, and other things. So our food is slightly different. We know that Aryabhat, or whoever the Indian philosopher is, has not discovered the mathematical value of zero yet. So this is a very, very long time ago. Most travel is done on foot or by horse or by cart, but there's very little else that is happening. And most construction, as you know, is made of stone. Most items are made with terracotta or metal. It's a slower, calmer, I'd like to think, time. And this is not the India as we know it as well. We don't have national borders in the way that we do. Even the idea of India is so completely different. There is no modern India as we know it. There's no India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Mongolia, Russia, China. A lot of these are very contiguous geographical areas, and they're populated by smaller principalities, smaller kingdoms, smaller warrior clans. So it's not like you're walking through Gujarat and you're saying, oh, wow, now I've crossed the border between Maharashtra and Gujarat. And it's not like, oh, now I've crossed over from India to Pakistan. Oh, there's a line of control. None of that. So travel is easy in the political sense, but it's much tougher in the geographical sense. You don't get very far on foot. You don't get very far on whatever animal vehicles you're using. And this is probably why the spread of Buddhism was slower, but a lot more interesting. If you see the map, you'll realize where everything is coming out of, right? This little area that we now look at as Nepal, UP, Bihar, that sort of north central India, which is really where everything springs from. And let's say at least 200 years after the death of the Buddha is when his teachings start to really flourish, start to kind of bloom and blossom outside the area of his birth, you'll see that Buddhism spread clockwise, traveling to West Asia first, then to China, and then beyond. And of course, it's not just one wave, it's many different waves continually changing each other, changing the kind of Buddhism, creating new waves of his teachings. And we're really looking at the time where all of this is in flux. People are building places, people are trading, people are talking to each other. And a lot of times when people tell me, oh yeah, of course I know how Buddhism spread, it spread on the trade routes. And I'm like, yeah, good answer. And then the second thing is like, yeah, of course they went down the Silk Roads, didn't they? They went down the Silk Road, didn't they? And I'm like, yeah, both of these answers are correct, but they're not the whole answer. Trade routes make great sense. The Silk Road, everyone should know, is not just one road, right? It's not a highway. It's not a road in which you start at one end and you end up at the other end, and that's all there is. And very importantly, a Silk Road is not an elaborate passing the parcel. It's not like, oh, you have a pot or you have a scroll or something, and then you pass it to me and I pass it to someone else and you pass it to someone, or you just kind of walk along and you reach the end of it. That's not how the Silk Roads worked. A lot of it is communities that are neighboring each other, communities that are bordering each other, that are helping ideas flow, that are helping inventions flow. Each step, a new layer of information is added. Each step, an adaptation is added. So if you have the teachings of Buddha that are coming out of one part of the world, by the time they reach, let's say, the outer reaches of Uzbekistan, by the time they reach Japan, by the time they reach Korea, or even down south towards Indonesia, a lot of change has happened. This is not a sealed packet that is opened only at the end of the journey like an Amazon delivery. A lot of change, a lot of flux is in progress. It's changing the people as it passes. It's changing the object as it passes. And very importantly, it's a two-way flow. Indonesia and the outer reaches of Japan and Uzbekistan have as much influence on India as India has on the other side. I'll tell you just how much in a bit. So now we know that the communities en route have played a very vital role in helping Buddhism spread and helping Buddhism evolve as well, right? How do we know all of this? We, of course, have been doing a lot. By we, I mean, of course, archaeologists. Archaeologists have been doing a lot of digging. They've been doing a lot of understanding and mapping of areas. So very simply, if you have an archaeological find that is, let's say, 30 kilometers apart from each other, right? Then it really makes sense that, okay, someone from one part went to the other part and that's how it spread. But we're also realizing that in the 30 kilometers that they did walk, there may be several other sites to see. So we are looking at all the dots that join the path. We're trying to figure out that all these arrows, there must be something along those paths as well. If we know that there's an old settlement, then it's possible that there is something underneath those old settlements, an even older one, from which all of these areas, all these modern areas have been created. So they're looking at what lay beneath, what lies before, what came before. And a lot of what came before, they're using a lot of technology. There's infrared scanning to figure out if there's something under the earth. They're trying to look at AI. So artificial intelligence is looking at research papers from around the world to see what kind of commonalities exist. There are also 3D models. I'll come to that in a bit. They're really fascinating. A lot of researchers from different parts of the world are collaborating. I know China, Pakistan, Afghanistan are collaborating very strongly on sharing their information. And they're saying, oh, okay, your Buddha head looks different from my Buddha head. Let's figure out why and how. And nothing is being studied in isolation. Just because we have found a site in Pakistan, in Gandhara, it doesn't really mean that that's all there was. How does that connect to everything else? How does that connect to the time that it was in? And that's really the story of archaeology, which is how we know what we know, and how we know that it spread wider, lasted longer, and was more influential, as the slide says. Mangesh, could we go to the next slide, please? Right, so what all have we found? We found that there have been statues and structures. We found coin caches. Sometimes all we found is you dig under a tree or you dig under a home, And you find a nearly intact terracotta vase or a bowl. And there's like a hoard of gold coins in it, which probably means that a traveler, who couldn't reach a bank in time, and who made sure that the next person after him, or perhaps him on the next trip, needed some money. So these were things that were secret locations. You didn't need a password. You just needed the location to go and access your money. A lot of copper plates. Remember, this is the copper age. Copper is being mined quite extensively. And if you write something on copper, it lasts much longer than if you put it on, on ink or scrolls or paper. So a lot of Buddha's teachings are appearing on copper plates. There are mantras punched on gold foil, which I think is wonderful. Someone clearly thought that the Buddha's teachings are precious enough and valuable enough. And clearly they wanted to show off as well, because why would you punch anything on gold foil? There are, of course, more humbler inscriptions on palm leaf, on ivory as well. There are murals. You can reach a place and suddenly the story of the Buddha is all along the walls. A lot of artists traveled to be able to go paint these murals, or they heard the stories from a traveler and said, gosh, this story is so amazing. I'm going to put it into pictures so that people apart from me will hear it. Remember, not everyone was literate. Not everyone could read and write. And in any case, along the Silk Road, it's possible that you didn't understand the language. So the murals were a great idea to help transmit the story of the Buddha, of the stories in his life. And of course, there are scriptures in at least 20 languages. So the map that you saw, it covers 20 different languages. That's how far the Buddha's teachings spread. And that's how many people started to be interested in the doctrine, in the principles, in the philosophy, and in the life of the Buddha himself. This stone relief is depicting the death of the Buddha, and it comes from the 3rd century in Pakistan. It's in the Met Gallery in the USA. It's so beautiful. Take a look at, it's not just the death, it's something that was carved in the 3rd century. But look at the people and look at the faces in the 3rd century. That is more than 2,000 years ago, 2,300 years ago, right? You already have artisans who care enough to put emotions into stone. So you have those two figures that are at the top of the frame. You can see the grief. You can see one guy covering his ears. There is clearly a sense of despair. The one in the center, you can really see the idea of the loss that the Buddha has passed away. And these are really wonderful things. These are, someone really cares enough to be able to tell this story. And I'm hoping that this is one of the many things that when you go to another museum to take a look at, it'll make sense to you, because these are people from so long ago trying to tell the same stories that we're all telling each other now, but they're doing it in stone. If we can go to the next slide, please. Now, one of the things that fascinated me when I was doing my story is the Buddha teaches minimalism. He teaches an idea of looking inward. He tells you that desire is the root cause of all evil. He renounces all his wealth. His whole idea is about divesting. It's about looking within yourself. It's about internal change. It's about giving up. And yet, for a religion that is giving up, it has left so much wealth. It has left so much beauty. It has left, left so much high value items. There's gold, there's scrolls, there's silk. So when you look at what the trail of Buddhism has left behind, it's almost an opposite idea of what Buddhism really believes. So when you pray, it's about simplicity, and it's about poverty, and it's about humility. But they're teaching you poverty and humility using some very, very high value items. And that was very exciting to me. I didn't know why there was such a dichotomy. And so I spoke to I spoke to a very eminent archaeologist. I spoke to KTS Sarao, who was the former head of the Buddhist studies at the University of Delhi. So I said, how did Buddhism, which preached a renouncement of the material, leave so much material evidence? And he says, you must understand that it's more than just a religion. Monks that were spreading the Buddha's teachings would travel along the Silk Road with merchant groups for safety reasons. The merchants, in turn, would rely on them for spiritual support on these risky journeys. Over time, as they took those journeys, because once you realized there was a safe path, you continued to use it. It became one of the well-known paths, right? And over time, shrines started to sprout at these rest stops. They became a constant in an uncertain landscape. If you didn't know anything and you were taking a journey for the first time, and you just got out what we now know as India, and you got into an arid land, you got into a desert, you got into the upper reaches of Mongolia, nothing made sense. But when you saw a Buddhist shrine or when you saw a statue, you suddenly knew that you were home. And they were built for precisely those purposes. So they started to do these little rest stops. And over the years, over the centuries, these rest stops grew. They started to have storehouses, they started to have factories, banks, guest houses. Suddenly, there was a monk who was operating the entire enterprise, or maybe a team of monks that was operating all of this 24/7. So you could come, you could stop at any time. And you would then pay the monks, or because the monks were already there, they would do the trade. They were the holding area for a lot of goods and services that would travel, right? And kings would understand this as well. So they would benefit from royal patronage. And you see slowly what started off as religion became such an interesting and intrinsic part of daily life, of travel life, of trade, that it was impossible to shake Buddhism from everyday life, from the way that people were conducting their business. And that helped Buddhism flourish a lot. And it helped people appreciate what it was that the monks were doing. They were more than just monks, they were really people who were operating life at the time. And that for me was very exciting because it tells you more than just archaeology. You're not just unearthing a vihar, you're not just looking at a rest stop. A lot of these places serve more than one purpose. And a lot of those purposes are, things that we would still think important in the 21st century. So archaeology really is filling parts of the story that are not found in the scriptures. The Buddha is not saying go down to Uzbekistan and find monk number 3 and give him 15 pieces of copper or whatever it is. But from archaeology, we know that such a monk existed. From the walls of a cave, we know that there were people there who were worshipping this kind of things. And everything that you don't hear in Buddha's teachings, you can really fill from all the material evidence. And like I said, there is no one Silk Road. There are many branching routes, so you know exactly how something worked a little north, something worked a little east. All of those changes were really part of the larger whole. We also find clues to how we lived, ate, traveled, calculated, kept records, traded, and lived. So all of this is really part of everyday life. Buddhism didn't work in a vacuum, just in the way that all our religions don't work in a vacuum today. And the things to understand is all our big cities today, all our old big cities, the more you dig, the more you search, the more you pay attention, you realize our histories go much older than we all would like to acknowledge. In Mumbai, I spoke to an archaeologist one and he said, Bombay was rocking in the 12th and 13th century. I said, what? He said, yeah, that's long before the British came. That's long before the Portuguese used us as a base. And I said, what was happening there? He said, no, of course, it was this major rest stop for Buddhist travelers. I'm like, where were they going? They were just going further on ahead. They were trying to go further and further and further to spread the Buddha's teachings. And as they went further, every stop became a little hub. That hub became a little storehouse, restroom, blah, blah, blah. And all of them became cities. So when we have large cities, perhaps we have the Buddha to thank. And I think that was really wonderful. This image is a clay sculpture of the Buddha from the Xiangpo. Please, I apologize in advance for any mispronunciations. I have only read these words and never heard them out loud. So if anyone listening in would care to give me a better way of saying the right words, I'm only too happy to listen. This is a clay sculpture of Buddha from Shizanpo in Inner Mongolia from the Royal Buddhist Monastery built during the Liao dynasty. This is 916 to 1125, so about 500 to 600 years after the Buddha has passed away. It's already reached China. It's reached China in a way that they're looking at stone sculptures. Mangesh, what do you think of this picture?
This is a very beautiful picture, Rachel, and I cannot but admire the beauty of it.
Yeah, and one of the things that they're realizing is to find a royal patronage for the Buddha. That means 500 years after Buddhism has started to move out of India. That's half a millennium away in a whole other country. They care about him enough. Look at the expression on someone's face. This is not just 2 dots for an eye.
No,
This
no, no,
isn't
no.
this isn't your meditative pose of the Buddha. They're really looking at Buddha's teachings in such detail that they want to capture every emotion, every
It is a
rasa.
gentleness, Rachel. There is a gentleness in the face. The whole art is
There's
so gentle.
there's absolutely a gentleness in the face. And what's fascinating, as you see through all the pictures in this presentation, there's such a commonality, and the gentleness, it's exactly the right word. There's a commonality. All those pictures are gentle, but they're so different from each other.
True.
And you will realize that, it's there in another slide as well. Wherever the Buddha's teachings went, everyone appreciated and accepted the Buddha as one of their own. Now, the Buddha isn't Asian or East Asian looking, right? If he grew
Right.
up and in Bihar, or and he moved around in the Bihar Nepal region, as we all as the evidence suggests. But
Mhm.
here's a man who's looking indisputably Asian, indisputably
True.
Chinese, and this is our Buddha. So you can see from archaeology how much acceptance of a new religion has already been inculcated. And that for me is one of the things that archaeology teaches us that the scriptures don't.
Yeah.
Next slide, please.
Okay.
All right, so let's go to Nepal, which is where our story begins. There's some really interesting work coming out of Nepal. As you know, Lumbini is a major hub for international travelers and Buddhists from around the world. Nepal has spent a lot of money to boost its Buddhist tourism. One of the things that they're also doing is UNESCO has for a really long time been doing digs in areas in and around one of the early temples there. This one is called hold on please.
Take your time. This is very fascinating indeed.
So the Buddha disapproved of the idea of devotees focusing on him, right? And so we don't know very little about him and his life. So we know everything that we know about the Buddha is written at least 200 years after his death.
Yes.
Now, I don't know whether I'm going to be as important that people write about me 2 years after I die or after you die, Mangesh. But I hope we get it right. I hope that when people are talking about us, they stick as close to what was real rather than make it up. And because everything is very far removed, there are very few pieces of evidence from Buddha's own time. There's a lot of work going on, and it's very interesting. Right. So followers believe that his mother, who was going to her parents' house when she was pregnant, went into labor and gave birth to him holding onto a sal tree in the Lumbini garden in present-day Nepal. We know that Emperor Ashoka built the first Buddhist structure there, a pillar which was inscribed by his own name and the tale of Buddha and his birth, and a date that is corresponding to the 3rd century BC. So this much we know. This is our starting point historically. That spot is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But in 2013, the British archaeologist Robin Conningham started to excavate inside the 3rd century Maya Devi temple that also stands there. So this is 300 years before even the new millennium starts. It's the 3rd century BC. So they start to dig. They're digging all around while people are still praying. And he finds that what he was digging, there is more underneath. And so he keeps digging. And he finds a roofless wooden space with signs of ancient tree roots over which a brick temple has once been built, right? So he goes down to find something old, and he finds something even older. And he finds that there are charcoal and sand fragments there that date back to 550 BCE. Now, this date is very fascinating. This is exactly the time of the Buddha.
Yeah.
Now, if this is a Buddhist shrine, they don't know yet if this is a Buddhist shrine. If this is a Buddhist shrine, that the timing would make it the first one ever built. If this is the first one ever built, his argument is that this is where the Buddha may have been born. That is fascinating. That is really fascinating. Now, these are great leaps of faith. People really want this to be true. People have put all of this money into the digging. The UNESCO would like this to be true. But Indian archaeologists are like, maybe not. And of course, Indian archaeologists are very proud of their Buddhist heritage. They're like, no, how could this be? How could the birthplace of the Buddha or the oldest Buddhist shrine not be in India? We know that Bodh Gaya, we know that Bihar is such a wellspring of Buddhist history. How could this possibly be in another country?
Wow.
A lot of Indian archaeologists are very skeptical of Robin Cunningham's, not of his digs, but of his interpretations of the digs. So they say that a lot of tree worship happened way before Buddha's time as well. People have been worshipping trees for millennium. So the fact that you have found a tree and you have found a shrine does not mean anything. It does not mean that it is specifically Buddha. And it is quite possible that someone took an existing temple that was already popular and put on top of it the idea of maybe this could have been the Buddha's birthplace. So we don't know that connection between what this is and what it could be. As you know, Indian politics is
Yeah.
full of great leaps of faith of what it is and what it could be. And this may be one of those examples in terms of Nepal. Here you can see Cunningham's team, digging and trying to find some evidence. Of course, when a woman gives birth to a baby, she doesn't leave stone fragments around for millennia. They're like, yahi paida hua tha bacche. So we don't know. We really have to piece together these things very meticulously. And what is really lovely is at the back of this picture, you can see all the monks just waiting to pay homage, saying, if you are right, and we think that you are right, and we want you to be right, we are so glad to have found a new place that is actually from the Buddha's time rather than everyone else's interpretation. So I think that's really wonderful. Can we go to the next
very,
slide?
very amazing slide that you have shown, and very beautiful.
Amazing. It's so amazing. And I think for all of us who live in India, our understanding of the Buddha comes, first of all, so belatedly. And there's a big gap between Buddha, his teachings, it being forgotten and being revived again, For the West as well, I think they only found out there was a great revival in Buddhist teachings only in the 1800s. There are these major gaps, and we've come in, it's like trying to watch a movie, watching part 3 and part 4 and saying, wow, origin story kya, what is the first scene? What is the second scene? Who killed whom, which is why we have reached here? Who loved whom, which is why we reached here?
Right.
All right, let's go to Pakistan, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan. The stuff gets really interesting here. Let me tell you a little bit about this area. Now, in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa area, which is very arid, very little rain. Very little rain means a lot of the archaeological digs are in very good condition. That means nothing has been washed away in the rain, and it has not had very much habitation. So not too many Lodha apartments being built over what would imagine are ancient sites. Very few major infrastructural projects, no highways. So a lot of the sites are relatively undisturbed. It's a very hot country, not too many set of countries, not too much activity. Means that it's a bonanza, of course, for archaeologists. Now, there are 150 Buddhist sites across the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa area, which was a major center for early Buddhist development 2,300 years ago, which means when Buddhism sprung out of India, when it sprung out of Bihar, a major direction that it took. We were saying it goes counterclockwise. It goes clockwise. This is one of the first places it decided to make its first home. And the area was a major center for Buddhist development under Ashoka's reign 2,300 years ago. And people have been digging in this area since at least 1930. Last year, they discovered a monastery and education complex, which is the largest in the region, which is believed to be at least 2,000 years old. There are stupas, there are vihars, there are school and meditation halls. There are smaller cells where monks could retreat into isolation. So already you realize that it's not just us getting together and sharing information. The idea of meditation is important. So if you are going to build a cell for a monk on a hill, it means that it's not just for travelers. It means that there are people in the area who want to escape the physical world, the material world, and they're starting to build for them 2,000 years ago. That means like Buddha's teachings are like, yes, we do understand. We are starting to see the wisdom of all of it. There is a coin which dates from 30 to 375 years before Christ, which spread across, this whole area, modern day Afghanistan, Pakistan, northern India, all of them adopted Buddha's teachings quite nicely. And what is really wonderful is there are some frescoes where you can see the Buddha doing the namaskar as well. So it's taking a whole bunch of Indian ideas, or what we would have called Indian ideas, and spreading them across. This image that you see on the left of the head of the sculpture is one of my favorite Buddhist artifacts in the world.
This is a beautiful head.
So
Buddha head.
beautiful, Mangesh. And if for anyone listening, for everyone watching, consider how you see the Buddha, right? He's got these curly little coils of hair. He's got one little bun on the top of his head. You
Right.
usually see him looking in a particular way. This guy, this head, I mean, I really wish I had the body as well, but the Smithsonian, where the artifact is, only has the head. This head almost looks Greek.
Yes.
If I didn't know that this was the head of a Buddha or a Bodhisattva, I would not know. There's no indication that it is Buddhist in the way that we understand it. But those eyes, you look at the gentleness that you're talking about, you look at this inward meditation, and that's when you realize, oh my God, this is early. What I'm looking at is an early Buddhist representation of the Buddha. Look at his hair. I don't think that's the style of Bihar or Lumbini Kapilavastu. It's very clearly from the local region. So people are already starting to say, no, the Buddha is ours. This is what he may have looked like. That's fascinating to me. We move on to the central picture, which is a story in itself. Now, 2021 marks 20 years since the Taliban destroyed the Bamiyan Buddhas in Afghanistan. Hold on a minute. The Bamiyan Buddhas in Afghanistan are built into the rock. That means there's this large cliff, and they're much, much, much larger than life. They're the size of a small building, as you can see. And there used to be, until 2001, a large bas-relief sculptures of the Buddha into the stone. But the Taliban took over in 2001 and decided, Buddha, what Buddha? No, we are an Islamic country. Muhammad is everything. As you know, there are fights about religions everywhere you go. And everyone decides to erase their past until they realize you really can't erase your past. You are your past. But despite pleas from around the world to please preserve these sculptures, the Taliban was like, no, forget it. And they destroyed those sculptures. And it was a sad day around the world. 20 years later, of course, the Taliban has had a resurgence. But between those two times, once, I think earlier this year, if I'm not mistaken, scientists went and did a 3D remodeling of what those Buddhas looked like. They illuminated them, and just for a while, once they put the lights on, you could see what those Buddhas may have looked like. So those Buddhas had been standing there for almost 1,200 years. They were destroyed in the matter of a day. And again, just for a couple of hours, for those who really wanted to see it, you could see what it was that had been preserved for such a long time. And Afghanistan, of course, the other great story to tell is that the Chinese have bought over a copper mine in Afghanistan, and they were hoping to mine copper. But what they found was that the mine is connected to a huge Buddhist stupa and sanctuary. And the local monk there used to be a really rich guy who used to use the copper from the mines to mine Buddhist coins.
My goodness.
Yeah, and help trade along, which basically means that, like I said, it was not just religion, it was religion and everyday life. And everyday life and business helped Buddhism spread. I'm hoping that all of these things continue to thrive as the Taliban takes over one more time, but we don't know. That seems to be the sad story. The area that I'm talking about is called Mes Aynak, which is it's a 2,600-year-old monastery that was a spiritual hub along the Silk Road, which is also connected to the copper mine. And you look to the third image, it's not very easy to see, but there's a guy who's speaking out of it, right? He's got a little mustache, if I'd like to. He looks a little more Central Asian than our Greek friend on the left. And this is one of the murals that they uncovered in 2016 in a place called Termez in southern Uzbekistan. Now, the fact that they have found a Buddhist style mural all the way there makes you realize ki kahan pahunch gaya. This is how far Buddhism has reached, that they had found a mural there. Uzbekistan was part of the Kushan Empire. Its residents were intermediaries as goods flowed from east to west. But the mural is unusual. It was discovered in a stone basement adjoining a pagoda, and it seems to have been made in the second to the 3rd century. And despite its age, the blue and red are so vivid.
View is so beautiful.
Yeah, and you can see that it's got an eastern-western sort of confluence going on. That means the Uzbekis made sure that they were part of all the cultures of the world, and that cosmopolitanism is coming out in this picture. It seems to be part of a lost, larger painting about the life of the Buddha. I don't know anything about the story. I can just see this guy peeking out of me after all these years, and I'm wondering what his story is, you know. And it's proof that the route didn't just transmit things. The Silk Road is not just for silk to go. It's not just for gold to pass. It's for ideas, religions, philosophies to transmit east to west as well. And I think that's very fascinating for me. Next slide. Yeah, you can continue to look at it for a couple of seconds while I drink a little water, and then
you take your time. This blue is also found in Ajanta, I think, and this white
blue is also yeah, exactly. So I think one of the things that the archaeologists are doing is they're looking at pigments and they're looking at pigment history to see commonalities. If the same pigment is available around the world, but it was made in a very far area, one can then conclude that the trade routes made sure कि आप बुद्धा बना रहे और blue बना रहे तो ऐसा ही बनाना होगा. Actually, the information was being transmitted, a standardization was being set up, that people really wanted the same ideas, to have a commonality around the world. In the same way that a cross represents Christianity or an Om it's the same symbolism. And these are the ways that we are painstakingly piecing things together in the past.
Should I move on to the next slide?
Yes, please. Where are we? Here are our other neighbors. Sri Lanka, Thailand, Myanmar have done fantastic. They are all tiny countries and they've done really good jobs of preserving monuments. I know Sri Lanka has a tooth relic which they believe belonged to the Buddha, and there's a whole temple that has been around it. As you know, Buddhists are, it's a dominant religion in Sri Lanka. But with Thailand and Myanmar, what they're also doing is they're trying to find modern interpretations for Buddha's teachings and looking at how ancient monuments can survive today. So there are a lot of, it's part of a lot of government policies to make sure that these are part of tourism routes. That means you come here to know who we are, and who we are has been Buddhist for a really long time. And they've done a very, very good job. In fact, a lot of Thailand's restoration policies are being used around Southeast Asia as the ones to follow. So they're setting the template for other countries. In Bangladesh, there's a really fun story. There was a storm that tore through the village in southwest Bangladesh in 1988. All these trees in a mango orchard were kind of fallen, and the owners decided, chalo, forget mangoes, let's just plant banana. But instead, they were not able to grow those banana trees. And because under the soil, there was a thick layer of brick. And they're like, these roots are not taking, we can't grow banana. They can't grow banana because there's rock underneath. And then 30 years later, they tried to plant mango again. They said, chalo, forget it. Let's just go back to mango. And that's when they decided to look at the bricks more closely. What they thought were rocks were actually bricks. And they had unearthed a whole brick structure. The archaeological department was brought in. They did excavations for 3 months. And right under all those mango trees, they found a 1,200-year-old Buddhist monastic complex. Yeah, well, no mangoes, but at least you got some history, right? And last year, they continued to dig. They found 2 temples. They found courtyards. They found these residential cells. Residential cells are usually, they only fit 1 human being, which means the idea is for solitude. There are ornamental bricks. There's terracotta plaques. There are clay pots. So yeah, you never know what you find once you decide to go down, digging. There's another site called Nateshwar in central Bangladesh. That's the picture you're looking at here. It's a 1,000-year-old temple, which they excavated in 2015. 2015, guys. So that's literally, you thought you'd seen everything and you started to dig, and more and more and more of this stuff is uncovering itself. So you think that, there may have been, let's say 100 monks in the area. You look at this, you look at sites like this and you realize there must have been definitely more. Everything is coming up telling us the story that Buddhism was far more popular than than our 2 or 3 lines that our textbooks tell us. Researchers say that the revered teacher and Saint Atish Dipankar spent time here before he went to Tibet and China. And well, we don't know about his life either, so this is all we have. And what's really nice about the Nateshwar site, and this is of course an aerial view, is you can see very clearly demarcated areas for living, for praying, for sleeping. So they were very, very serious about what they were going out to do then. All right, so that goes. That's the end of our neighbors and our international segment of this conversation. Are there any questions? Is there anyone who has any queries that has been coming around?
I don't see anything at the moment.
Not to worry.
Not to worry. And I think what you are doing is very fascinating. In a few minutes, you have really
gone through the whole world.
Unfolded the entire sort of the history.
Yeah. I think when you look, once you start to realize all of this and put it together, the next time you look at an artifact, you'll immediately know what it means. You'll be able to read it better. You'll be able to understand it better. You'll be able to connect it to the area, the time, the people, the economics. Why would something be cast in stone, in bronze, in gold? Why would you want to write something down? And it gives you a new appreciation, I think, of any religion or any history anywhere. So that's our world darshan. We will now move on to sites in. Oh no, sorry. There's Japan and China. There are some interesting stories as well here. Sorry, I moved one slide too early. Japan, which is again a very, very far off place. You wouldn't think that they would have something that this ancient, because most people think that that Buddhism reached there much later, and it did. But in Japan, just pull out my Japan notes here. The priests were overseeing the renovation of a temple in the Shiga prefecture in northeast Kyoto. Kyoto is their temple town and a former capital. They found that history was hiding in plain sight. 2 old pillars had blurred, very smoky, sooty images because they kept, lighting incense. So the walls were very dark and sooty. Not these pictures. I don't have a picture from the Japan one. But they didn't want to clean those things up because they were scared that they would wipe off the pigments underneath. So they used infrared photography. And they found that there were images of 8 Buddhist saints that were underneath all that soot. Each pillar bears the image of 4 bodhisattvas. The photographs indicate that they were once painted in bright blue. There's your blue. There was green and vermilion used as well. And these pictures are much, much older than we all think, because they come from 538 to 794 years, the first century, really, putting them among possibly the oldest known Buddhist paintings in Japan. So it's not as recent as you think. There was stuff happening much, much earlier. China has a fascinating story. China, of course, because they adopted Buddhism so overwhelmingly, there's stuff all over the place. And as China starts to modernize, every time they seem to dig, they seem to find some kind of old, new, Buddhist relic. And sorry, go back if you could. There are caves, there are UNESCO monuments. China is really at the forefront of preserving its Buddhist heritage. But one of the things in the Kizil cave is that there are 2. If you walk across 2 kilometers of the Kizil caves, you will of the Uyghur area, which is really northwest, if I'm not mistaken. You find 339 cave temples, which basically means this was another rest stop for the Buddhists. But if you go to, these are the Kizil caves on your left. But if you go to the Duhang, which has an unusual Indian connection, if you see this black and white picture on your right, I can't read it. Yeah, it seems to be in a language no one can understand. And for years, you had historians and linguists and archaeologists trying to figure out kya likha hai, because it's not Chinese, it's not Mandarin, it's not Cantonese. What could it possibly be? It didn't look Indian. I mean, maybe it did, we didn't know. But they looked at the text from this cave, cave number 465, and they're like, what could it be? Until one smart researcher took a photograph and flipped it digitally, and it's ended. Once you flipped it digitally, that means instead of reading it from right to left, you were reading it from left to right, and realized, oh my God, what I'm really looking at is ancient Sanskrit. So what could have possibly happened? Why would you write ancient Sanskrit ulta, right? Nobody seemed to understand. But the inference is that a lot of the people who were doing the decorations on these caves couldn't speak, well, they couldn't speak any Indian language, and they couldn't read the script. So whatever they got, they just pasted on. And one of the guys possibly just pasted it on ulta, which means that for years it had been a mystery in terms of what's going on. And once they flipped it right digitally and they looked at the JPEG, I would imagine, of the picture, they realized, oh my goodness, here's Sanskrit all the way in China. That's our China story.
Good.
Yeah. All right, so that's our world tour completed. I hope that you enjoyed that part of that part of us of our talk. For India, the story is slightly different. We are only now realizing how much of Buddhist influence was within the country as well. You know, this as Buddhism died out, so did our interest in any of the material evidence, which possibly means that if something was a Buddhist temple or a Buddhist cave, and the cave was already built, right, but nobody was worshipping anymore, it was much easier to just convert it into a Hindu temple or any other local religion. Well, because the infrastructure was already there, people already knew where it was a landmark. Why build a whole new temple when you can just move into an existing one, right? Which also means that a lot of our ancient temples actually carry markings of times before that space was used as a temple. But what's also happening is when you find a new site and you find a new cave, a lot of the local people are very unwilling to believe that it is anything other than Shivji ka mandir or Lakshmi ji ka mandir or whatever it is. And so they are often, when you see one of these caves or when you see any of these residential cells, they're like, ha, Shivji ke liye banaya hoga. And very quickly, the moment you start to discover these new things, a local community will go and put a Hindu idol there and start to worship, which means that archaeologists have a very hard time trying to convince, of course, local people, and of course, continue to do more research there to confirm any of their findings. And of course, I mean, the idea of faith is so ingrained in India is that they really don't want to believe it could be something else, not out of a sense of hatred, but I think it's in India or in any other country, you so want to believe that you have discovered something that is connected to you, and in this case, Hinduism, that a lot of archaeologists continue to complain or to at least, lament the fact that this is one of the big challenges with digs and with finds in the country. This is the picture above is not old at all. This is the Global Vipassana Pagoda just outside of Mumbai. It's beautiful. It's if you're taking the ferry from Gorai, from Malad and Borivali, and you're going towards the Gorai Island, it's illuminated so beautifully at night. You'll see a pitch black sky. You'll see this golden pagoda glowing. It's really a spiritual experience because you can see it reflected in the water. You see the sun set or the sunrise glint of it, the sunset, of course. And I've been inside this. I'm not Buddhist, I'm atheist. But I've been inside this structure when they were constructing it before it was sanctified as a pagoda. Right under this pagoda is the world's largest unsupported dome. So it's a really huge dome without any pillars, and it's put together, just the arch holds itself up. And I was there when the construction was still on, and there was a pigeon that was right across on the other side of the dome that had flown in, and it sort of flew out. But on the other side of the dome where I was standing, I could hear its wings flutter. And that made me realize these domes and these pagodas, they're really for one person to talk in a low, calming, meditating, voice without having to shout out the teachings of the Buddha and be able to transmit it and communicate it beautifully across all the people there. I'm sure I don't need to tell anyone who's worshipped how acoustics matter. So that's, I thought I'd just put a little Mumbai connection here. Yeah, it's not old at all. Next slide. Super. We start with Bihar, of course, where you would think that since it is it is the hub of Buddhism, it is really where Korean, Japanese tourists come, that we may have seen everything, but we really haven't. Buddha's legacy continues here. In January, there was more evidence because they went up to a place called Lakhisarai, which is an administrative center in Bihar, and they started to dig in this area called Lakhisarai, and they found the region's first hilltop monastery. That means it may have been built there to prevent against raiders, against weather and things like that. And it's a fairly intact monastery, as you can see. There is also more evidence that the lost city of Krimila lay underneath. There is scripture that keeps referencing these cities, but we didn't know where these cities are. So a lot of archaeologists believe that this is really what they have found. Clay seals have been found here from the 9th and the 8th centuries. There have been monks that have been staying over here. Texts on new sculptures meaning newly unearthed sculptures, that the monastery may have been headed by a nun. And this is another fascinating thing about Buddhism. A lot of female priests, a lot of female monks who wielded a lot of power. You would think that because the Silk Roads were a male-dominated area, it was much easier for a man to undertake a journey, that it was a very patriarchal sort of connection. And here, archaeologists have found evidence otherwise. A lot of monasteries have they found that there are toilets in 2 separate areas where then they're not supposed to be. If there are only men staying in, let's say, 18 residential cells, you need one cluster of toilets. But there are 2 very distinct clusters of toilets, not in Lakhisarai, but in many other places, that are far apart from each other, indicating there may have been some kind of gender segregation, which means that women were accorded at least safety and protection. Well, in Lakhisarai's case, also power, which I thought was really nice. There are lots of terracotta seals which help us date how long back this area was flourishing. So that's Bihar. Let's go to the next one. In Jharkhand, in an area called Hazaribagh, which is just very close to about 100 kilometers from Ranchi, the capital, the ASI found 3 mounds last year as having possible links to Buddhism. One turned out to be a 900-year-old shrine. There were 2 subsidiary structures that were underground. Then this year they started digging again, and the second mound had another shrine. Then they turned out to have 6 sandstone sculptures. You can see 6 of them here. And there was also a likeness of Tara, which is the female the Buddha in the tantric style of Buddhism. And of course, this is India. The moment these sculptures were discovered, they were also stolen. And there was a huge search for who had taken them. And of course, thankfully, they were returned because the local police decided to kind of act. But these are one of the challenges that India is facing as well. Buddhism is precious enough and valuable enough to steal, but it's not precious and valuable enough to honor and respect for what it is and keep it together. So there's always that dichotomy. I love this picture. It's, I think, from the Hindustan Times. We carried the story when it came out, but I think a whole bunch of the media carried the same image that had been disseminated to the press. This is a more familiar idea of how the Buddha is depicted, isn't it? Because you see Indian gods as well, which are part of that same little backdrop, which have all the subsidiary gods around them, and all the iconography is so Hindu influenced, and yet it's not. So for me, this is a very special picture. And I'd like to know, of course, if I went back in time, I'd like to know why you would do so many copies, or what I seem are copies of the same style. What were they meant to be traveling and being passed on as souvenirs to another place? Were they all supposed to be the decor for the same area? I don't know. I always have all these questions.
Great. You want me to go next?
Yes, please. All right. In Gujarat, they have found a nunnery, a place just for female monks. In Telangana, they have found perhaps the largest stucco statue, which is within India's borders. It's a life-size bodhisattva made from a brick base. It's covered with sand, lime, and other things. There are also meditation cells, prayer halls. So Telangana, which you really wouldn't think has, a vibrant or a dynamic Buddhist history, and here we are. Maybe it does. And these date back from the 1st century to the 3rd century of the modern era. And there's just all kinds of things. They're finding beads, there are iron objects, there are storage jars. And all of this means that it was not just religion, it was commerce as well. Jammu and Kashmir, where digging, of course, is hard for many, many other reasons. There is one site that has been, I think it was first unearthed in 2000. Then there was a cleanup done in 2009 as well. But more work needs to be done. We don't know what's underneath there. We just know that there are brick structures, there are 8 spokes. The same style and design that you can see in Punjab and Andhra Pradesh is also in up there in Kashmir. So you know that they were taking, I'm hoping, blueprints and plans and tips and tricks from something that worked in one area that may work in another area. And there's a lot of sharing. Yeah. What I'd like to think of as we wrap up our India tour is, once you find an artifact, who owns it, who keeps them safe, right? Take a look at this very haunting picture which is on the slide. I've never seen the Buddha depicted so somber and so morose. This is the fasting Buddha. This is when the renouncing has just begun, and when the Buddha, I think quite famously in one of the scriptures, says that he puts his hand on his stomach and actually starts to feel his ribs and his spine, which means that he has gone without food for so long and is realizing what it is to live without material goods, right? So that very special moment in the scriptures is depicted in stone in this image here. You can see the hollows in his eyes. You can see the bent curve of his mouth. You can see the sunken in cheeks, those long ears, which are also part of the suffering and the iconography. And every time I've seen this picture quite often, it never fails to arrest it. You can see the emotions, you can see the idea that the nose is broken, but that's it doesn't really take away from the emotion. But then I realized that this picture is in the statue exists in the British Museum. It was taken from Pakistan, from the Gandhara region, where it had been standing since the 2nd and the 3rd centuries. And now it's in the British Museum, right? So most stories about colonialism are about loot and plunder. And in India, we'd like to say, of course, give us back the Kohinoor, please give us back all our gems and jewels. And Prime Minister Modi's government has been integral in bringing back a lot of artifacts from museums and collections around the world to India. But they're all from our Hindu past and not from our older Buddhist past. So we're not really valuing this as being, of course, this is from Pakistan. This should be legally returned to Pakistan and not India. But we are not even asking for what's ours that now exists in the West, that were taken by archaeologists who are really glorified diggers and plunderers. And they seem to have a great new afterlife, creating so much wealth, so much interest, so much research for in countries that are not really their own. And this is one of the things where, if you're really looking at Buddhist history and how it's changing the world, there are good and bad things about it. One is that you don't have access to all your antiquities. You don't have access to all the material wealth that makes you you. It lives somewhere else. On the other hand, if you are a country like the Taliban and you are intent on destroying your own history, perhaps it's best that it's in a safer place, because future generations can learn about a past that existed, even though you try to wipe it out in your own country. So there is, again, 2 sides of the same coin. I would love to see a fasting Buddha in my own country. We haven't found it yet. We may have destroyed it already, or it may be really in a collection abroad. But we need to do more, and we need to really preserve what we have, collect what we have, at least document what we have, and say, no, this is ours. And when we say ours, whose ours do we mean as well? Can we go to our, I think that's the last slide, the next one. Yes. So a lot of repatriation of artifacts, a lot of history is being acknowledged, a lot of things are going back. Ideas you can't send back, but things you can send back, right, Mangesh?
Yes.
So the US, the US has sent back to Thailand these beautiful, this collection of reliquary that they had taken, I think, 200 years ago. And so the Thai government had requisitioned for them to be returned. Of course, the first time you say, please send them back, any foreign country will be like, no, no, they were taken quite legally from your country before you were even Thailand, or before you had got your independence and you were part of the empire. And there are lots of arguments, but I think persistent arguments from both sides. And I think the West is also realizing that these were all taken under very unfair circumstances, and they do rightfully belong to their countries. Thailand, at least for now, at least, is very respectful and knows exactly what these things mean for their country, for belief systems, and for the pride of the nation. So it's gone back to Thailand. Germany has sent back, I wish I could blow that up. It's a really tiny collection of pilgrims. It's broken. God knows who broke it and where. But it was in Germany for a really long time back. It's gone back to Kabul. Kabul is in Afghanistan, of course, so I don't know what they're going to do with it. I hope, if nothing else, they at least just put it back underground so it remains safe, but don't blow it up, please. It's gone back to Afghanistan this year. And the UK again sent back earlier this year. Look at these stunning pictures. Look at these stunning heads of the Buddha and of the pilgrims. They all look so different from each other. That guy on the right almost looks like some kind of Buddhist Greek Santa Claus. But of course, that's just me reading into it, what I feel. Their heads are different. Their headgear is different, but they all have that same sense of beautiful, gentle calmness that we've been talking about all this time. These have gone back to Kabul as well from the UK. And of course, I hope that if you are looking at physical evidence of the past, it's also because someone has kept it preserved all this time, which is why we can make all these connections, which is why we have this conversation, which is why I've been rolling on for more than an hour now. And the cases, of course, that ideas can tell us some things, but things can tell us so many other things. We have not learned all their secrets yet, and there is so much more left to be discovered about Buddhism in the world and in India. Thank you very much.
Rachel, actually, when you were making your presentation, I had mixed feelings. I was feeling happy to see that all this glorious past is coming to the light, and at the same time, there was a sad feeling that something precious is lost, and how we can recover it. And while you were speaking, I was just thinking about a book written by one very famous Italian archaeologist. You might have heard about it. His name is Giovanni Verardi.
Oh, lovely. Yes, he's the one who did the Gandhara in the 1930s. Yeah.
And he has written about, the title of the book itself is so, indicative: Hardships and Downfall of Buddhism in India.
Oh, lovely.
And, it shows how, this gentleness was not, it just didn't naturally dissipate. There was a conscious effort to undermine this gentleness, this peace, this culture of compassion, I would say. So I would say that when you were talking, I had this mixed feeling, very happy on one hand, and on the other hand, very sad about the things and the status of affair. I would really like to congratulate you for, this is not an easy way to reconstruct the past, because the data is scattered all over the places. Like you talk about the Bangladesh village, and you talk about a remote past, like the copper mine in Afghanistan, and you talk about.
Sometimes you really have to just dig for bananas to be able to find something more valuable than bananas.
You see. So I think that tells the entire story of what might have happened to Buddhism in our country, and this thing. But there is a, I would say, glimmer of hope, in the sense that this new research methods. You talked about Telangana. I spent some time in Telangana, and everywhere. You will find it everywhere. In Tamil Nadu, you will find it everywhere. In Maharashtra, we can boast of like 1,000 small and big caves in Maharashtra.
Exactly. And the path that we would take to Telangana, we would pass through Maharashtra, etc., and get there. But a lot of the Buddhist, history goes through many other states before it gets there. So,
That's true.
Yeah, it's quite interesting.
All your great hard work, I congratulate you. But I think we are just scratching the surface. And there is so much to be done. I think it's a lifetime's work to really unearth all these things. And Rachel, thank you so much for
Thanks very much. Thank you
yeah.
for I would like to state that I am not a scholar of Buddhist studies and I am not a historian. I am merely a journalist. Most of this was just to give our readers a sense of understanding of what's really happening. And I have to say, Mangesh, and for everyone sort of watching, this is one of the most popular stories I have ever done. There were people from around the world. There were diplomats. There were Buddhist scholars who got in touch with me saying, thank you for putting it together in such an easy way so you could understand it. And it has really helped vastly a public understanding of the history of Buddhism. So I feel very gratified by that.
Oh, it's wonderful. And do you want to, before you go, do you want to share us the story behind the story, the meta story of or
Yeah, the story behind
or
mostly the story behind the story is, as a journalist, you pitch it to your editors, right? And I happened to, this was the lockdown, so I was doing it virtually, and I was telling my team and my editor, I said, just hear me out. I have this story, and I think there's something in Telangana, and I think there's something in Gandhara, and I saw something in Uzbekistan, and all of them seem to be connected by archaeology and Buddhism. And do you think I have the time? And do you think, would you give me the resources and the time to sort of just dig a little more and figure out what's going on?
sorry. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Huh.
Yeah. So, and they were very kind. Hindustan Times was very kind to give me the time. Sometimes you can look up a story and research, and you can find a whole bunch of things, and it's all very boring. So that there was a story there, but it's not a story that perhaps your reader wants to read about just yet, or maybe it's just more and more of the same. But so it's always a bit of a risk when a journalist is sent off, to do whatever they feel like doing. But I'm very, very glad and very lucky to be working at HD, where they allow you this sort of leeway. And even more, I'm very glad about the things that I came back up with, because it's such a wonderful story to tell my readers and now everyone else who's watching. So that's the story behind it.
Thank you so much,
Thanks very
Rachel.
much, Mangesh. Thank you to Ambedkar Karma.
Very, very grateful to you for doing this, and we will hopefully find an opportunity to talk to you again. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.